Good morning, everyone. I'm Hi. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dave Batra. I am the co-founder and CEO of Lyxel&Flamingo. Today, we are one of the largest independent digital agencies in India. And welcome to Elevate 2025. Now, Elevate is going to be a power pack session. We're going to meet a lot of people, a lot of marketeers, founders, CXOs, as well as publisher partners, only to help everybody who's attending Elevate to plan their 2025 marketing journey. Now, to kick off the session, I have an exceptionally reputed leader, business leader from India, Mr. Abhishek Ganguly, who needs almost no introduction. He is the guy, the man who built Puma to what Puma became over a period of time. The legendary journey from 2005 to almost 20 years of growth of Puma from a very very small startup brand in India in the 20s, in the mid 2000s, to now almost exceeding 20,000 crores of revenue. So welcome, Abhishek. Good morning. Thank you so much for your time. It's great to have you here. My first question, for everybody, I think everybody wants to understand your journey at Puma and how you build the brand. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about your journey?
Thanks, Dave. It's great meeting you guys over the event. I hope you guys have a great time.
Thank you.
Well, you want me to you want me to speak about the Puma journey or before that?
So before that, start with whatever. I mean, just give context to our audiences. I'm sure they want to
Okay,
know a little
sure.
bit about you.
Yeah, sure. Well, like you know, you and I went to IIM Lucknow almost at the same time. I was one
Yes,
year before you, and from
yes. In
campus,
the
I
same.
landed myself, same hostel, Hostel 6. That's how we know each other. And I, at that time, I would say I stumbled upon the industry of the sportswear, retail, fashion industry. I stumbled upon it because I just got into Reebok very early in the days. Reebok, those days, was one of the first brands to have entered the Indian market.
Yes.
And I joined him back just after campus in 2002. And this was quite early in time. Why I say the
Yes.
early in time is those days. It seems like a long time back because forget e-commerce. There was not even shopping centers in India. You know, shopping
Yes.
centers in India meant Ansal Plaza in Delhi, and there was
Yes.
some malls that started coming up in Bangalore, in Orbit in Bombay, and
Yes.
Forum Mall in Bangalore. So the retail infrastructure was very unorganized, and it was not like they were high streets. And brands had some franchise retail stores. That's when I entered the industry. And it was also before really fashion and sports had become the thing, right? This is before, coming from the fact that India didn't have a strong sports culture. The category itself was not activewear category. Sportswear category was very small. And that's when I started. Reebok used to be the largest brand. I started being a management trainee and then ended up in Bangalore in 2004 as the regional manager. And Reebok was doing very well among all the brands those days. Early brands: Nike, Adidas, Reebok, Benetton, Levi's had entered the market quite early after the economic liberalization in 1991 had set in their offices. And that's when Puma happened. It was 2005, 2006 end, when the brand was completely not present in the country. It was completely unknown, almost unknown, I would say. Had very small presence retailer. Um, and the company did not have a subsidiary, and we set up the subsidiary. I was like the second employee to join. I joined in as a director sales and marketing, as a you know in my mid 20s. It was a great opportunity. I didn't think about it much. I thought, I was getting this opportunity. I did not even double triple click on how Puma was doing globally, or whether this category is worth it or not. It was, I just jumped onto it, and it was a out and out startup because it was not like very the subsidiary was not extremely funded. It was very, very
Yeah.
sparing funding, I would say, very small funding. And we set up the office and then started building the brand. And this was very early in the day, so one had to really learn by doing. There was no template that
Yes.
was there that
Yes.
one could say "Ki this will work or that will not work. But what happened over of time that Puma became a very, very interesting proposition in the Indian market. And over a period of time, I took over as a managing director in 2014 subsequently. Left the
Yes.
business in 2023, so I was there at leading Puma India for 9 years, and also in between in 2019 also took over Southeast Asia. Never left Bangalore. I used to continue to steer it from Bangalore. India was a very, very interesting journey for Puma. It became like a crown jewel for Puma. By
Hmm.
2022, it was a 3,000 crore brand, the largest fashion retail sportswear
Yeah.
brand in the country by far. Um, Great journey, I would say. And there was a lot of things that led to to Puma being Puma in India, which of course I can talk about. But at the end, for me, it was very captivating, very, very. I mean, I always say this that I won't trade that with anything else. What happened in my
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
at Puma, and actually gave me a lot of strength and ambition, as well as I would say even network to actually
Yeah.
start up Agilitas, I've done for the last
Yes.
15
Yes.
months.
Yes, we want to talk about Agilitas. I mean, that's a very, very inspiring story for a lot of people. You've built a great brand. You're a legend for a lot of people in terms of things that you guys have been able to do. So, if you were to say very briefly, if, top of your head, what is it that Puma understood about, or you guys at Puma understood about the Indian market that so many brands have not been able to crack? And also from an external piece, what happens is everybody starts thinking, oh, you throw money at the problem and suddenly your brand will become big. But like you said, it's very sparsely funded in the initial stages. So I'm just very keen to understand, what is it that you guys understood? How did you fix it? Because it does seem that money was not the solution here.
17, I would say the 17 years of Puma India for, building from zero to 3,000. Um, Actually, capital was not
Yes.
readily available initially because, mind you, German company, India are trying to figure out, you know, um they were not like saying, hey, here goes your 100 million and now go and
Yes.
buy market share. Um, so Puma actually had put in till date only about 20-25 million dollars of equity capital
Wow. That's
to
it.
build this business. Of course, some credit lines, some debt was additional to about, I would say, depending on the season, or because we had a cyclical business in terms of
Yes.
seasonality, maybe about 70 million. So 20 million equity, 70 million debt created this business. So it was definitely not, and this is over a period of time. So this was not like go and buy market share. In fact, initially the board at Puma was quite unsure about in India, like I said. So it was about also building credibility, and also building self conviction in the team that, hey, this is a large piece to solve, to be
Yeah.
had. What worked for the company and the brand, to be honest, was a lot of first principles thinking and doing
Hmm.
things that had not happened. So it was not
Hmm.
clearly a copy paste. And today I realize that's some very fundamental to building business. What generally happens is people are always looking at success, what has worked for others, and trying to copy. In fact,
Yes.
for the brand Puma, copying the global template did not get in that success. Uh,
Right. Right.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can
Yeah.
you
We
hear me?
can hear
Sorry, I
you.
got a
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's
So
fine.
it was not it was not um, it was creating one's own path. I'll give you examples. Globally, Puma at that point of time was a very wholesale driven business, like selling through third
Yes.
party, and selling in the inventory, and retailers would sell through. Whereas in India, we ended up creating business which was more than 80%, where the merchandise and the inventory was actually decided, priced by the company, managed by the company,
Oh, okay.
and out of which
Okay.
more than half was direct to consumer. So what I mean is 80% of the business was where Puma decided what inventory went in and what inventory was taken out of the stores, or the online platform, like marketplaces, or franchise stores. And out of which 50% was actually operated by the company directly,
Wow.
which was a formula that globally is followed.
Yeah.
From a brand building perspective, it was absolutely digital. I used to take a lot of pride in saying that 100% media is digital. On and off,
Wow.
we've done some TV campaigns and some out of home, but fundamentally, we were a digital first company in our media spends.
And today,
Social
it's
media,
common.
yeah,
Sorry, I'm
sorry.
saying that today it's very common for a lot of brands to say that they're digital first, but you are talking about a period which is pre-COVID, where
2009,
obviously,
2010. 2009,
wow,
2010, when Facebook was not even a thing that time, and that's when we started putting money on
yes,
social media. Come 2014, 2015, 2016, we really doubled down on digital marketing,
yes,
social
yes,
media,
yes,
working with influencers, creators, large scale influencers from sports, culture, from music, art, uh,
wow, yeah,
fashion, sport. It was a very, very, very indigenously built, and
wow,
that thinking really worked because it was efficient. We knew where we were putting the dollars. We knew how we were
yes,
driving traffic, and that came, and this is not just performance marketing. It is absolutely
yeah,
the
yeah,
top of the funnel thinking was
yeah,
also very, very digital, and we created audience cohorts that we wanted to really go after, and how did we stitch that together was a part of our brand building journey. And I think overall, building the brand with a clear, with the art and the science, right? I mean, where are we, how are we being efficient, and the science of how we are targeting that, along with the extreme penchant for doing things differently from a art of marketing perspective, in terms of the way content was created, the brand was built. I think overall the
yeah,
brand was built in a very, very different manner. And today, if you see right from the search volumes, or if you look at how Puma is against competition, the big two, globally, versus any other geography, India would be right out there, because there is the other
yeah,
two brands, Nike and Adidas, have a huge global heat, right?
yeah,
From their kind of athletes to their kind of some of the product hype products that they
yeah,
have, and which was way out of league for Puma back in the days too, and even in the recent past as well. But I think
right,
that had really worked. I can just go on, right from how we built the team to
amazing, yeah,
everything was a bit of departure from what was seen as norm, globally at
wow.
Puma, as well as in India, other brands in India.
Fantastic. Now, obviously, this is what you're doing at Agilitas is also an absolutely fresh journey. And it starts a little different. I mean, day zero, you raised a fairly large amount of investments. You have, in a way, built a very solid moat in terms of manufacturing. Now, I just want to understand how is the journey in Agilitas different, because a lot of times people, whatever has worked for them, kind of pick up the same formula for success and then try and replicate it. So, what is it that you're picking from a journey at Puma, and what is it that's new as you're trying to build Agilitas? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? So, what's the story and everything?
Well, first and foremost, if I have to give a cricketing analogy, Yes, we are in sportswear, so we're playing the same sport, right? We're
Right.
playing. We have to
Okay.
score runs and win, right? And we have to lose less wickets, right? I mean, they're in the same, but it's
Yes.
an
Obviously.
absolutely different format in an absolutely different conditions,
Yes.
and that's how I see it.
Yes.
Success in the previous format, in the previous versions, will definitely not mean success in the current
Yeah.
format, in the format that
Yes.
or the future format that we are building. So it is, it's the same consumer. Some of the things you're selling sportswear, but the way the entire business model, the entire the way we will approach building brands, all of it is absolutely different. And I keep
Cool.
repeating this because very naturally, having spent almost couple of decades in the industry, it is very natural for a lot of people, including investors, potential investors, the retail ecosystem, trade partners, um, to think that I and the team have done this before, and it is just about replicating the same thing, which is
Yeah.
absolutely not the case. For various
Yeah.
reasons, the business of Puma was a different brand. It was in a different world, in a different time, with a very different ingredients. At Agilitas, we're building a very, very different business model, very, very different times. The next 5, 10 years is going to be absolutely different from the last 5 to 10 years. So if again I was to come and copy paste this, I would be absolutely failing. And I keep reminding
Hmm.
this that because for it's easy to understand this when you're in your mid 20s, because you're anyways solving problems first principles, you're anyways
Yeah. Yeah.
very futuristic because you don't have a history or a background, so
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have no other choice. It's
Yes.
thrust upon
Yes.
you. But for me
Right.
today, it's a very, very clear choice I am making, because I really
Right.
believe, and I keep telling my team, also for those who come from the industry, and even
Yeah.
quite a few of them from Puma, that my Puma journey today, if I was too obsessed with it, will become my dogma, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it
Yeah.
will pull me down, because that will not mean
Yeah.
success.
Yeah.
So what today Agilitas is building is absolutely different. And look, I have spent so much time in the industry. I really wanted to build an Indian company in this category, which had global, presence, as well as created global impact. Agilitas is playing into the space of manufacturing to retail, which means that we is in sportswear. 70% of the business is footwear, and India doesn't
Yeah.
have manufacturing capabilities and supply chain in sports footwear. So we also wanted to do manufacturing, and we didn't want to build it
Yeah.
from scratch. So we acquired India's largest sports footwear manufacturing company called Mochiko Shoes, which has
Yeah.
been around
Yeah.
for the last 18 years. We
Yeah.
acquired that as to our fold as with a 100% acquisition. That is a large company, makes for all global brands, most of the global brands like Puma, Adidas, New Balance, Skechers, Under Armour, Reebok, um,
Yeah.
and most of the Crocs, and most of these
So
brands.
solid
It's more
product.
than 1,000 crore. It has a very, very strong ecosystem on manufacturing. It's by far, when I was at Puma, they used to be a supplier, so I know that they were definitely the best factory in sports footwear for India. And eventually, most of the manufacturing has to move into India, because closer to market, and also a lot of a new regulation means that
Yeah.
if your supply chain is in India, you will have benefits. So all the brands are
Yes.
wanting to do that. So that's why we acquired it. It was a futuristic mindset, I would say. It
Yeah.
has 11,000 people, 12 million pairs of capacity. We are increasing that. So that's our
Oh,
manufacturing business, which is
oh,
operated out of Gurgaon, and has factories in
yeah.
Uttarakhand and in Noida.
Yeah.
And now that business, we're investing in brand businesses. We'll invest into 3, 4 brands very meaningfully. Each brand will have
Yeah.
separate kind of a proposition. separate kind of a consumer from a price tiering to positioning to offering perspective. Couple of them are launching this year. The first one is Lotto, where we have
Yes.
acquired the license for 40 years for Lotto in India and also
Wow.
Australia and South Africa. We are launching that in this year around end of March. And the second brand will launch in June. So there are two large brand launches. Again, one of the brands is a completely which we believe would be India's first aspirational sports brand from India to the world, and that is something which is very very exciting for us. So building that journey again, and then we'll invest in a couple of other brands back end of 2027 and early 2028, and create a portfolio of brands which are very very coexistent, complementing, and less competing within themselves, and build group capabilities at Agilitas level, right from manufacturing to sourcing, design, R&D, marketing,
Yeah.
back end structures, a lot of the group capabilities, and then have clear propositions for the consumer with separate brands.
Nice.
So that's what we are
Nice.
building. We are also investing in multi-brand retail with, I would say, couple of stores. That's an experiment. I would say it's a bit of an experiment we are doing this year, which is more of an experiment. We'll see whether that format works. I would say it's like a venture within Agilitas.
Yeah.
So it's an
Nice.
integrated setup. Building brands is probably going to be the most interesting proposition given how the next 10 years is going to pan out for India.
Yeah. 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 Now, if I were to double click on just the marketing aspect of how you're building brands,
Yeah.
because a lot of times when people look at marketing, they only think from an advertising or a communication standpoint, but so many other aspects of marketing that are not very well understood. Sometimes, how the channel strategy is going to be, how your pricing strategy is going to be, how your positioning strategy is going to be. So do you want to talk about things that are going to be important for you? Let's say we pick up example of Lotto. What will be important? How do you see that? I mean, things that you can talk about. I know a lot of it is
Yeah.
in the works pipeline.
Yeah, I think for any brand to be successful, the brand needs to have a reason to exist.
That's right.
And I think it starts even before, because people, a lot of people would think that the brand is storytelling, which it is. Um,
Yes, it is.
but even before that, one needs a reason why the brand exists. And I think clearly
Hmm.
the why of the brand, the very existence of that brand in a competitive landscape, both from an opportunity perspective, that what categories will it play in, what price points, which is very obvious, but also from a
Yeah,
brand perspective, why that brand exists. So a Lotto
right.
brand will stand for example, in the Indian market, on why Lotto exists as a brand. What does it really mean,
Yeah,
and what does the brand make the consumer feel
yeah,
in its existence? Right? Because
yeah,
there are plethora of brands today. The eyeball
yeah, yeah,
attention, getting eyeballs and attention, and one can always put products together, right? I mean, while putting good quality products and putting good quality distribution is also a very very important mode of what we are building. But even before that, the
right.
why of why should Lotto exist, and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
we have a very clear, we believe that we have a very clear proposition on that what does that the existence of that brand within a world full of strong proven brands.
yeah.
And then from there comes in that what are the stories you're telling,
Hmm.
and why are you telling those stories, and
Hmm.
how are you letting the consumers engage with that story, and how are they feeling like sharing themselves and engaging
Yes,
themselves with those stories. So it's about
right.
continuously creating the stories, compelling stories which are relatable, engaging, and
Yeah,
sometimes even taking a point of view. Because if you take a point
right.
of view, then there are people who will go against that point of view, and then there's people who will be in favor of that point of view. But it's very important
Yeah,
that as brands, through content and story and communication, what and through influencers. There is a brand narrative or a brand story, and there is also a point of view that the brand takes, and it starts
Nice.
from that. And I think that's something that we are establishing. Choice of the right kind of influencers, whichever field it is from. See, sportswear today dabbles from absolute sports specialist pitches to the fashion ramp, right? Or in between you have street
Yeah.
and people
Yeah.
going
Yeah. Yeah.
office, or all
Yeah.
kinds
Yeah.
of transcends the boundaries of whatever is full-fledged life environment. At home people are wearing uh, lots of the influencers also come from a very very diverse different kinds of backgrounds, and yet what is the thread that stitches that together as a brand? I think that's very very
Interesting.
important, because you're not just doing a campaign and then doing another campaign. So what is the stitching that story, which is related to what the brand stands for, is fundamentally very very important. That I would
Wow.
say is important. And then when it comes to content and execution and all that, creating enterprise differentiation, generating talkability, these are the obvious ones. But I think this is also sometimes very difficult to do,
Yeah.
and it's very very important. Post that is how efficiency can be built through absolute great choices. What do you say no to? Whether, and it is for the entire funnel marketing. What do you say no to,
Hmm.
and where do you go deep? And what do you explore and what do you not? And what phases of that in various stages of the brand is a very important choice in the funnel thinking. And this I am not just
Right.
saying in performance marketing, where there is an obvious efficiency thought process, but
Yes.
also on the
Yes.
top
Yes.
of the funnel when you're really building the
Reach.
consideration and interest of the brand and the reach for the brand.
Right. Now, it's interesting because a lot of times when you look at brands that are starting the 0 to 1 or the 1 to 10 journey, they kind of push out the story or the narrative to later parts. Initially the idea is, oh, can I build a brand? Can I get some attention from public? Should I invest money on performance marketing? And later I'll start thinking about storytelling because it can get expensive to build stories like that. So you are taking a very different path here. Is it correct? From how we have seen a lot of 0 to 1
Absolutely.
brands.
Yeah. Yeah, see, my brand thinking is also, probably a bit different. It will not be probably relatable to some of the other companies, because my thought process of building agility, I will always pick a proposition that's
Hmm.
deep in manufacturing, wherein it's least 1,000 crore business, and I'll take it to
Yeah.
3,000 crores. Or I will take in my brand business, I'm not building from scratch. I'm taking an
Right.
existing, so for example, Lotto has a lot of brand recall. It doesn't have
For
search
sure.
volumes. It today does not
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
brand energy. But I'd still have a proposition than starting from scratch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even the second brand you will see that there are people would know about it, and there is a very distinct proposition on that brand already. So it's a bit of
Hmm.
a different journey. Having said that, the business is starting from zero, and like I said, you need to put energy into the brand, even in the brand Lotto, which we will be doing. But what I feel that for a small brand, or a brand, let's say a company which is, let's say, less funding for the next 1.5 years, I think it's very very important to have clarity around the why that brand exists, I think. And
Right.
it is also
Right.
tied into the product story or the product strategy that the brand
Yeah.
creates, right? In the marketplace, it's not just about throwing some brands out there, right? The
Yeah.
existence of that brand, and then you can have various ways to tell your stories. Sometimes, absolutely, if you have a strong story and you have a way to say, not everything has to be told through paid media, right?
Right. Right.
There is a lot of content marketing today that is possible, which can happen organic, which can happen unpaid,
Yeah.
which can happen through virality. But there
Yeah.
has to be a strong strong focus in telling that brand story and narrative out. A lot of people do that. There are places where founders have been the face of the brand to tell the brand stories. There are
Yeah.
places where brand itself becomes the product, becomes the hero to tell that story. And over a journey where the initial phase, it was not like spending $20 million to build that brand, right? So I think it is about very natural thing to do would be to say, let me do some performance marketing, let me keep targeting
Yeah.
audience through performance marketing ads. And I think uh, it is about thinking and believing that you need to continuously keep investing in the brand story right from the beginning. Now,
Yeah.
to each their own, depending on their category, depending on competition, depending on stage of the business, funding, etc., etc., capabilities within the organization. But I think prioritizing this, because at the end of it, products are made in the factories, but brands are made in the minds of the consumer.
Yes. Yes.
Does
Right.
connect with the mind of the consumer. One does not create a sticky brand business.
Yes. In fact, I would like to double down on that because I work with a lot of brands as part of our business. And what we have observed over the last 2 or 3 years, there's so many brands to choose from in any category that you pick up or any even subcategory that you pick up. And what has started happening slowly on marketplace as well as on Google is that today, instead of looking for a specific brand shoe, I might just generically search, okay, I'm looking for a white sneaker, so show me what you have. Or the same happens in across categories, even durables, high involvement, low involvement categories too. So as a result, I do believe that a lot of it comes because most brands are inherently quite undifferentiated now. They don't bring perspectives to the table. So as a result, as a consumer, I'm probably just observing all these brands as replaceable and not really being pulled into something. And I think that makes for a big problem in the long term because then you're only just spending money on performance marketing to be able to extract some revenues. Now, coming to how your playbook is for Lotto, and the generations have changed. You started when Gen X folks were in the 20s, and then you saw last decade was all about millennials, and now it's Gen Z, and now we're also started looking at Gen Alpha, started imposing their influence at the household budgets and all of that. So, what will change for you, and how do you see this? In terms of your playbook, how will that impact your playbook? Do you think the same principles of marketing will apply, or things are going to change as well?
Well, I think there are certain principles which probably in a very different avatar um,
Mhm.
was applicable then too, but it
Yeah.
requires a completely different approach, a different implementation, a different thinking. The What I just said is about having the real reason for existing of the brand right from
Yeah.
your product to your brand story. And and I think that's very fundamental to building a business, because it's again very first principles. If you are just
Yes.
copying somebody else's, and you will have to keep throwing absolutely uh, so much of performance marketing today. As you know, the platforms are not cheap anymore.
ROS.
And it's like, neither is marketplaces where you want to retail, nor is outside when you look at publishers. It's not going to be like, if you're just one out there and just through buying traffic, you're not going to get you're not going to get that
Yeah.
the teeth that the business requires eventually, which requires the brand to be successful. So I think that principle does not change. But how do you
Yeah.
execute it? What is today relevant to the brand, to the consumers? Let's say we are talking about Gen Zs today. What is relevant, from a product and brand perspective? What is relevant to the Gen Zs today is probably
Yes.
evolved over time.
Yes. For sure.
Right? So that has changed. The product expectations have changed. The way they
Right.
shop has changed. The number of products they can buy today has changed. I'm just talking of my industry. When 15 years back, people would buy one sports shoe and had a one black and brown shoe for formal to go to the
Yes.
office,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
And today, if you see that people are buying lot of sneakers for various
Yeah, yeah.
occasions. So the
Yes.
how do you retail to them? How do you get into their maintain their the life cycle of the consumer is absolutely changed, and also how they're engaging with the brand as well as through the various platforms has also changed. So the way
Yeah.
of to execute that is the way to create content which is engaging for them is also completely evolved, and it will keep evolving.
For
The
sure.
funny thing about business is we have learned over time that if the business does not evolve, even the best of the best brands will either saturate or go out of
Yeah,
business,
for sure.
which is great for new brands. But the new brands, one day, if they're successful, they will become
Will
incumbent
also
brands. And when they
yeah,
become incumbent brands, they have to continuously think how do they continuously stay relevant in a while the principles of brand building hasn't changed, but how to continuously evolve in the new world. And the new world
yeah.
will always keep changing. So I
Now
think
going
it's a
back to
continuous evolution.
yeah, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
just saying that the game of the cricket, the rules will not change, but yeah, the format is
Yeah.
changing. The days of playing
The
is
format is
changing, but
changing.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I think I understand what you're
The
coming at.
grounds are changing, the conditions are
Yeah,
changing.
yeah,
But you still need to score runs. Those basic principles. If the ball hits the wicket, you're out. Like all some of
yeah.
these basic principles are the same, but the look at how the most popular sport in India, cricket, has evolved over time, and similarly, the world of marketing and brand building has changed over time, right? And
Yes,
in a very loose parlance, loose
yes.
comparison.
So going back to what you're saying, the maybe the fundamentals of how a brand narrates a story and how it occupies space in the mind of a consumer is probably something that will make a brand more resilient, is what I understand. How that story is being told and how you adapt to new media might continue to change.
Yeah.
If I were to ask you, okay, pick up maybe a few brands that are more recent. Uh, do you see any brand coming out of India whose story you like, and they've occupied a good space in your mind, let's
Well,
say?
I would say, different categories, different brands,
Yeah, in category, not
and
your
there are
category.
some of the very, very obvious ones. I'm taking very, very different. I really feel the way Carrot Lane built its brand is absolutely so phenomenal, and very, very retail centric. The way they stitched the consumer journey, the way they gave the experience at the retail at retail, I find it phenomenal,
Very nice.
what they have done.
Another I am Lucknow
I
imprint.
also Sorry.
Another I am
There is an
Lucknow.
I am Lucknow connection there.
So
Yeah, there
I
is an
was
I am
asking
Lucknow.
Avnish to come, but unfortunately was busy. But yeah, I mean, great story there also. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I see that to be a great story in a category which had a lot of incumbent
Yes.
brands, right?
Very difficult
And
category.
that is phenomenal. And I like I get very inspired in places where there is a lot of incumbents, global
Yes.
incumbents, and in walks an Indian brand. Like
Yes.
that's why the
Yes.
Mama journey for me
Wow.
is also very phenomenal. Like,
Yes.
starting with shampoos. Now shampoos have been around for God knows how many decades,
Yeah.
and with
Yeah.
L'Oreal and some of the best global brands, and then to come in with an Indian brand and saying that, and how
Yes.
differently it
Yes.
was played with a very clear story, good for you, good for the earth, and then coming up with, creating something like which did not exist, but kind of
Yes.
creating a niche for itself initially with the onion shampoo, and then building the
Right.
brand around,
Yes.
then getting into other brands, like how product differentiation was created. So the brand had a narrative, a story, a reason to exist, and then it came out with products where initially focus were saying moving the consumer thinking to a very different approach to shampoos, and then
Yes.
building the brand around it. I really loved, and it was just as latest as 2017,
That's right.
that the that you know Varun and Ghazal had set this up, and it seems like just the other day. So again, today in the world of marketing, you can really create businesses quite thick and fast, right?
Yes.
To think of a consumer business going to the public market with the kind of proposition that they had, let's leave out share prices and all that. Let's give
Yes.
absolute credit to how they built from from nowhere to really
Yes.
challenging global, absolute global incumbent leaders. I really get
Yes.
inspired by those on a different level. The journey of uh, I would say uh, Kama Ayurveda. There are there are these brands where Forest Essentials. I
Yes.
love
Yes.
the story of Forest Essentials because there is so many friends out there outside India as well who are always looking for getting
Yes.
products
Yes.
from Forest Essentials. So creating within their own niche, creating a stew story, become again very story driven, product differentiated driven, the experience being different. So these are some of
Yeah.
the phenomena. If you look at it, it's just not buying the traffic which makes a brand
Yes.
tick.
Yes. Yes. It's
And if you look
bigger than
around
that.
in any category, that's how it has happened. It has come in with a very strong reason to exist, clear story, clear product differentiation, and then you penetrate into finding the right traffic, and building efficiency.
Fantastic, fantastic. So we are pretty much at the end of our conversation. I really appreciate that you could take out the time and we could have a little bit of peek into your mind about how you're building the brand. Uh, if you were to maybe leave with a message for so many marketers who are listening to you and trying to figure out what works and how do they plan, everybody at some point in time think, okay, I've got a limited budget. I want to do so much more, but I'm always constrained by the resources that are available to me. What are the top two or three things that you'd say, okay, here are things that you should focus on and leave the rest? What would those be?
Well, I don't know how much credibility I have to address everyone with,
Lots.
with messages, and honestly, nobody in today's world needs and keeps advices, but I'll still take a pot shot at it. I would say, sorry, a shot at it. I would say, um, first and foremost, I think more than the brand, I think we all as Indian businesses, whether we are operating an Indian brand story or we are actually a part of a global brand's India subsidiary or an India arm,
Yes.
I think we should make India relevant. And
Yes.
if it is a global brand subsidiaries marketer or a business channel head or whoever, should really think of making India the out and out, and the just hustle their way through and making India on the top of the radar in the global scene, in the pecking order. For
Yeah.
brands who are started from India, I think just building pride for Indian consumers, for and love for Indian brands. I think we are all waking up in the morning to do that, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
because that's
For
the
sure.
biggest pride and love gets created. So I think this is such an inspirational time for all
Yes.
of us, because it's a time that we make our own countrymen love
Yeah.
our own
Yes.
brands
Right.
and our,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah. Yeah.
think that should be good enough to be inspired. As far as operating brands is concerned, we spoke about it, so I'm not going to repeat what I just said. But I say, but I think uh, this is not a marketing message, but I think it's a thing that I have found over time is staying consistent to
Yes.
certain things and also evolving your story. It's about, it might seem like a dichotomy. So you are very consistent with your story and your thread that you're creating. But on the other side, you're continuously, as the market is evolving, your ability to create a very nimble structure which navigates and is flexible. I think this, which what might seem like to be a trade-off, and building that duality as a and sitting that together within the organization, within your business and your teams is very, very important. So these are the few things that I've seen that is quite timeless. But I think
Fantastic.
it's time for Indian companies, Indian brands, and the Indian market to really shine in the next 5 to 10 years.
That's awesome because pre-COVID, everybody used to talk about, okay, let's get some Caucasians in my ad and make myself look outside from outside India.
Drop
I
that.
think that's
Just please,
yeah,
for God's sake, even when it is AI generated, please have
yeah.
Indians,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
Let the the
Unfortunately,
pride
AI
begins
generates
at
very
home.
poor imagery of Indians, but I
Sorry.
do think that I'm saying AI generates very poor imagery of Indians. If you've seen it, it's a very,
Yeah.
very
So,
stereotyped imagery, but I think it's also going to evolve. But listen, I think it's because of people like you and leaders like yourself who have made such a big difference in how the consumer journey has evolved. I think that's why a lot of entrepreneurs are getting inspired and taking inspiration from people like you. And thank you so much for spending time with us. We hope to connect soon, and maybe I think this was a very short conversation. There are, like, I don't know, maybe 20 such questions that I want, but I couldn't because of time. But I really hope that we can do a part two at some point in time and maybe get deeper into your mind and understand how you're building Agilitas. All the best to you and all the best to Team Lotto. And we hope to see a big brand coming up very soon. So thanks a lot for your time, Abhishek. Thank you
thank
so
you so
much.
much. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.